Okay. Um, Hello, everyone. This is going to be episode 5 of Keeping Democracy Alive. My name's Rem Hellman, with Tufts Hillel again, still with Tufts Hillel, still doing the genocide and Holocaust programming through the Cummings Foundation. And this week we have Shiri and Mauri with Agahozo Youth Village. Yeah, that's I'm just gonna let you guys take over from here. Just a little introduction, and then we can just start talking. So, Shiri, you can go first.
Sure. Hi, I'm Shiri Sandler. I'm the managing director of the Agahozo-Shalom Youth Village. I'm normally in New York and I'm sheltering up in Connecticut now. And our village is over in Rwanda.
My name is Mauri Honickman. I graduated from Tufts in 2016, and I'm currently one of ASYV's International Visitors Fellows. So I was actually living in Rwanda. I moved there in December and was supposed to be there for the year, but of course, when everything with COVID-19 hit, I came back home, and I am now working remotely.
Nice. Do one of you guys want to just give listeners a quick rundown of? Should I just call it ASYV?
Sure.
So that's
It's easier.
Agahozo-Shalom Youth Village.
Yep.
All right. So,
I'll start maybe, and Mari, you can fill in, having been in the village a little bit more recently than I have right now. So ASYV is a youth village for about 504 kids, ages 14 to 21. We're a high school, a 4-year program. I mean, what a youth village is I like to think of it as close as an institution can get to being a family. So our kids are all vulnerable and orphaned. And they come to us needing healing, emotional healing, physical healing, in order to be able to take advantage of opportunities that will allow them to go on to live dignified and self-reliant lives. So we want to be for them and give them what an intact community would have given them: love, security, food, shelter, medicine, and the opportunity for a really good education. The idea being that if you can take 500 of Rwanda's most vulnerable children and raise them up, that they will raise up their communities and their families and their nation. So we think of ourselves as helping these kids find healing and love and becoming a permanent family to them while helping build a stronger Rwanda.
anything to add to that?
Shiri said it beautifully.
So I guess I'm not sure who to start with this question. How did you guys get involved in the youth village? I know I couldn't really read much about you, Mari. So maybe you should go first. But with Shiri, I was able to read on the website that you had done previous work with the Holocaust in general,
Mm-hmm.
and various programming related to genocide. So I could see how the transition made sense. But for Mari, yeah, how did you get involved with it?
Sure. So Tufts University has a trip that they run every year through Hillel, where a group will actually go and visit ASYV and do a trip. And I never went on the trip as a student, but I knew a lot of people who did, and I had learned about the village through my involvement with Tufts Hillel. And so I'd always been aware of the organization and kind of always knew that it was an organization I would have loved to have visited and been a part of. And when I was embarking on my career after graduating from Tufts, I jumped into the nonprofit field and was working for a few years in New York City. And I really wanted to work internationally. And I learned about the ASYV fellowship. And then one thing led to another. And I wound up moving there in December to start the fellowship program.
What exactly is the fellowship program?
Yeah, so ASYV recruits international fellows every year, young professionals to live and work in the village. The fellows have 2 roles. They serve a professional role. So everyone has a different specific job. Mine is working with the International Visitors Program. So when that Tufts group comes, I would have been the person to lead them on their journey through Rwanda and on their journey at ASYV. But we have a couple different roles that are our fellows serve. And then all fellows are also a cousin to a family, which we can talk about a little bit more in a bit, but we are paired with one of our incoming first-year families at the village, and we help them with English, and we serve as mentors and participate in different activities with the students.
Wow, that's amazing. And what about you, Shiri? What do you do with being the managing director?
Sure. So I run our New York office, and I'm responsible for sort of everything that has to do with being a nonprofit in America. So our fundraising, our board, all the legal stuff, that's all my responsibility. We have a small team of 4 here in the States, a much bigger team in Rwanda. So we have 165 full-time staff in Rwanda, to give you a sense of what it means to take care of 504 kids.
Yeah.
And I was a history major. I didn't think that one day I'd be working with like profit and loss statements, but somehow that happened to me. And I, as you were saying, Rem, come from a background in Holocaust and genocide studies. I have a master's in history, and I worked for many years doing Holocaust education here in the States and in Poland. But I have a background in the Darfur genocide activism community, and I was always interested in contemporary genocide. I was raised in a survivor family. My grandparents are Holocaust survivors. And my grandmother had always said that if you're going to care about the Holocaust, you don't do it just for us, you do it for everybody. Yeah. That it's really about being aware of what's happening to others as well. And so I had always felt a commonality, I think, with other communities that had gone through genocide, which is one of the things that really drew me to ASYV. And I loved the idea that it was this Jewish idea, this idea that comes from Israel, because the Youth Village model was founded to help raise orphans of the Holocaust, and applied in a different community, and we figured out how to make it Rwandan, to make it work in Rwanda, because you can't just take one idea and overlay it over a different community. Mm-hmm. And that really spoke to me, that it was about, healing and bringing these communities together.
Yeah, I think that's a great transition point. So could one of you talk about just the name of the village, Agahozo-Shalom, and what exactly? I'm assuming most listeners are going to be Jewish since it's through Tufts Hillel, so most listeners are going to know Shalom and what that means, as in peace, amongst various other meanings. But Agahozo is, to my understanding, a Rwandan word. Is that the language? Is that a language?
The language is Kinyarwanda. Okay. It is a Kinyarwanda word. Okay. It means a place where tears are dried. So when you combine the two words, ASYV is meant to be a place where tears are dried and where youth can live in peace. So it kind of encapsulates what we want the village to be for our 504 students.
Yeah, I thought that was I didn't know that there was any meaning behind Agahozo when I first looked into it, so I thought that was really awesome. And do you want to talk a little bit about just the initial founding of it with, what's her name, Anne?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So that's a great Tufts story too.
Yeah.
Mauri, I feel like you should be able to tell the Tufts stories. Yeah.
Tufts is just everywhere.
Yeah, it really is. It's a big Tufts place.
Yes, sure. So Anne Heyman, our founder, went to one of the Marin Moral Voices speaker sessions in 2005 with her husband. And basically it was a genocide survivor who was speaking. And at the end, there was a Q&A, and her husband, Seth, asked a question about what is the biggest issue facing Rwanda today. And the speaker said it was the number of orphans. So there were around 8 million people living in the country at the time, and over 1 million were orphan children. And so there was no systemic solution in place to deal with this crisis. So Anne kind of took that, she heard that and linked it automatically to what Israel had to deal with after the Holocaust, when there was an influx of orphans in the country. And she knew that what they did was build youth villages. So she thought, wouldn't that be a great idea if we could build a youth village in Rwanda? And that kind of launched the idea of ASYV, and she began networking, and she began talking to many different people in Israel, in Rwanda, in the States, and in just a few years, she was able to fundraise and break ground and start the construction for ASYV. And we had our first class of 128 students move in 2008.
Yeah. Is it one of the, outside of like Israel, is it one of the few places that has a youth village, or?
Yeah, so it's interesting because the term youth village is actually used by a couple different kinds of organizations. And so there's an organization called SOS Youth Villages, which are smaller, sort of family-based. But outside of Israel, it's the only youth village of this model. And there are a couple of organizations in the States that term themselves youth villages as well, but they're not totally the same. Our model is really founded in this idea of family, and is built out of family and family love, and using that love as a healing mechanism while providing everything else a kid might need, whether it's, we have a health clinic, we have a farm, we have the school. And so it's a completely holistic model, and it's the only organization of its kind outside of Israel that is holistic that way.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit more about the 4 core principles that you guys just abide by?
Yeah, sure. So we have 4 pillars or program areas, which is sort of how we impact our students, which is parental wholeness, the idea of being part of a family, which is health and wellness, which are both, as I said, mental and physical. We have formal education, which is our high school, which is one of the only sort of student-centered education programs in Rwanda, where what's called Chalk and Talk, which is really like a lecture-based program, is still the norm. And so our high school is really based in critical thinking and in discussion. And then our 4th is life enrichment programs, which is really extracurricular activities. So we have the idea that it's really important to have a passion. It's really important to have a dream. I always think that a kid who has something they love is more tied to life, right? Has more reason to go forward. And so we want our kids to feel inspired and to feel that they have value. And we give them opportunities to find things they love, whether it's Rwandan traditional dance or music, art, photo, video, sewing, all kinds of programs for them to take part in to find something they love and find something they're good at. So that's how life is structured in the village, really, those 4 pieces. It's also based on 2 other principles that we haven't really talked about, which is Tikkun Halev and Tikkun Olam, right? Heal the heart and then heal the world. We work with our kids to inspire in them a sense of Tikkun Olam, of their own ability to heal the world and their responsibility to do that as well. So our kids take part in community service activities, but it's also a really Rwandan idea that there's a lot of community service in Rwanda. There's national community service days when Rwanda isn't under shutdown. So this idea of being a part of a community and having something to give to a community is really important, because it also shows our kids that they have value and that they can enrich other people's lives.
Yeah. How much is the curriculum that these kids receive, or are they just generally aware of this idea of Judaism being a part of their education, of their upbringing?
I'll tell one quick.
Is it something pushed on them? Is it something kind of in the background? Is it something, I don't know. I'm just curious.
Yeah, it's a really interesting question, because so for me, the first time, my name is Shiri, right? It's Hebrew. Yeah. And the first time I went there to the village, a kid said to me, she was like 16. She said to me, "Oh, do you know about Tikkun Olam?" I was like, I do. Do you know about Tikkun Olam? Like, what's happening right now? And it's very much a part of the curriculum, but it's not about Judaism so much as about values. Yeah. The same way that if you went to a high school and your high school motto was like character, leadership, and service, you're going to feel that, okay, this is what's expected of us. This is what we're living in, and becomes a part of who you are in school. I think it's the same way in the village. Mauri, you probably have something to add to that, I would guess.
No, I think that's exactly very spot on, the emphasis on values as opposed to Judaism. And I think, Anne unfortunately passed away in 2014, and I think her legacy living on is really important for us in the village. So all of our students know her story. They know how the village got started, and they know the importance that, the Jewish community was a part of that. So I think there's just these values and these just elements that speak to the kids because it's just part of, it's what they learn about when they come there. And I think it's very integrated. It just feels very natural.
Yeah. You want to talk a little bit more about what it was like to actually be there and live there for how you obviously got cut off, but for however long you were there for?
Sure. So I left New York in mid-December and moved to Rwanda with the other fellows. So we were a whole cohort. We spent a week in Kigali and then moved to the village and jumped right into student life. We had our new students arrive. We had a week of orientation with them until the rest of the students joined us on campus. And then I lived there up until we left at the end of March. So I was there for a little over 3 months in total. It is an incredible place. It's really hard to describe the village and understand what it feels like until you're actually there. And I think it's a beautiful place visually, and it's also just a very beautiful place in every other sense of the word. And you kind of see those pillars that Shiri was talking about, you see it everywhere. So you see it constantly in action, and it's just, you see it's a living, breathing mission. And the kids are absolutely wonderful, and I miss them very much. And I'm sad that I can't be there right now, but I'm very glad to still be supporting the organization in any way that I can.
Yeah, of course. You guys want to talk a little bit about what kids generally do after graduation, what you guys are trying to prepare them for outside of Agahozo-Shalom?
Sure. So it's a really good question. And our goal is that when they leave the village, every kid has a pathway set, and that pathway is appropriate for what their skills and their capabilities and their interests are. So, a lot of our kids go on to college. Some of our kids go on to college in the States and in Europe and Canada. We have a student who's a sophomore at Tufts, as an example. Yeah.
You put me in touch afterwards.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah,
I'd love that. I think I actually don't know where he is right now, if he went back to Rwanda or if he's with his host family. But so that's wonderful for the kids that it's right for, but it's not right for every kid to go on to college. And so we're working to make sure that our kids have access to entrepreneurship skills. We work with them very heavily on their English skills. High school is in English in the village, so that they are prepared to be a part of Rwanda's job market. Now, Rwanda's job market is challenging. There's significant unemployment. A lot of people work in what's called the informal sector, meaning in farming, or they sell food or other, animals, things that they've raised, but not in a formal way. And so it's very difficult to sort of move beyond a subsistence lifestyle when you make your income by farming or in the rest of the informal sector. And so we want our kids to be able to have a better life because they've been through the village and they would have had before, whether it's farming, whether it's community leadership, or a job in the formal sector of Rwanda's economy. We think about 70% of our kids right now go on to college. We're actually really thrilled with the educational outcomes that we get. So the kids have to sit for the national exam when they finish when they finish high school. And the national average for passing the exam is about 90%. And our kids, it's a little complicated to explain, but about 45% of our kids wouldn't be allowed to go into academic high school when they come to us. That their exam scores to get into high school are so low that they would be sent to vocational school or they would leave school completely. Okay, so that's about 45% of our kids. Mm-hmm. And yet our national exam passing rate is 98%.
Wow.
Which is 8 to 10% higher than the national pass rate. And that's including, 45% of our kids not being allowed under other circumstances to even go to school and sit for that exam. So just getting them to the point where they can pass the exam is really important for us.
So that's really a testament to how much, because I would imagine, obviously they're younger than 14, but I would imagine if you're struggling to the point where you're not, what was it, 45% don't even qualify to go to
Yeah.
high school.
To go to academic high school.
Yeah, so if that's the case, you're probably just at a point where you don't want to be in school. You are doing other things. You're skipping school. So clearly, there's something going on, as in like a community building aspect. ASYV that's inspiring
Yeah.
these kids to see the benefits of school and wanting to be in school and learn, and that's
Yeah,
incredible.
it's an interesting question. It's something we talk about a lot, is about the motivation of our kids, that when we go out and recruit kids, we want kids who want to be there. We want kids who are going to take advantage of the opportunities they're given in the village. And they may, be at that point for a lot of reasons, right? They might have to work at home. They might not have the money to pay for school fees. Their schools might be so far from their homes. I heard the story yesterday of a kid whose school was so far from his home that he was sleeping in his classroom at night. Not in a bed, just in the classroom at night, because he couldn't walk back and forth to school every day. And so we're saying, all right, you have the motivation, you have the desire to learn. If we give you everything else you need and help you heal from everything you've been through, can you succeed? And by and large, the answer is yes.
More, how much is just like this whole idea of family? So how central is that to the kids there?
Absolutely central. So how our family system, what that looks like is that when the 128 kids who come in for their first year, they're divided into 6 families. And it's 4 female families and 2 male families, because we recruit 60% females, because females tend to be and remain to be more vulnerable. And so in the family unit, every family has a family mama, which is typically a middle-aged Rwandan woman who is there to give that type of parental support to the students. They live in a house together with around 20 girls per house and 24 boys per house. The family mama has her own room in that house, and the family does pretty much everything together in terms of their life in the village. They'll do activities together, they'll do meals together, they have family time at the end of the day to reflect and talk about the highs and lows of their day or their week. And it's a really important part of that healing process, as Shiri was talking about. And so for our first year families, they also have big siblings, which are typically ASYV alumni who come back to work in the village, who are paired with that family to help them through. And then also they were paired with a cousin, which is that fellow role, who are there to help with English and serve as a mentor.
It's a good transition point, because I wanted to ask about how many students actually but how many students return and are inspired to come back and dedicate their lives to actually helping new students come. Is there a percentage that you guys have?
So it's a really interesting question, because we are just a couple of years, we've been around, like 12 years now, but our kids it's a 4-year program and then 4 years of college. And so we're just starting to see kids who are adults, and how they come back to the village. And it's really interesting, because we have we have big brothers and big sisters, we have interns who are alumni, but we also have a couple of like teachers in training in the high school who are alumni. The assistant in our finance department is an alum. It's really neat to see, and they come to us and have jobs. And my favorite example of this is a kid who is here in the States. He's at Brown, and the first time I met him, he shook my hand and he goes, "I want to put you out of a job one day." I was like, "It's an aggressive thing to say." Okay. And I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Well, when we're grown up, we're going to take care of the village. Like, we're going to raise the money. You're not going to need to do it." I thought, all right, I'll take that.
That's pretty inspiring.
It's really inspiring. So we normally, in a normal year, bring the alumni who are in North America together once a year at our annual gala. They love it. And they they come and they put on what's called a Village Time, which is our Friday night, variety show. It's a talent show. There we go. Words. And I remember the first time I was there, I said to one of the kids, I was like, do you like this? Is it weird? Coming together and sort of performing and all that. Here in New York, it's different when it's in the village. And he said, no, I get the chance to do something for the village now. I get to show you guys how much it means to me,
Yeah.
and how this is my family. And I love that idea that to them, the sense of family doesn't end when they leave the village. Our kids, they're family for life, with each other and with their mamas, which I think is really incredible. When the lockdown happened in Rwanda, we got an email from one of our alumni who said, can you get me the names of 10 of the neediest kids? I know that they're going to go home from the village during the lockdown and they won't have enough money for food. I'd like to send them food, like money for food. He's a truck driver, he's a delivery guy. And he sent money for 10 of our kids to have food during the lockdown. This sense of family. He doesn't know these kids. They weren't in the village when he was in the village, but it doesn't matter because that sense of family lasts.
Yeah, on your website, there's a video that just a 4-minute overview video, and I have no names associated, but there was this guy who's an alumni, and he was saying that he was paying for 4 of his younger brothers. Is there a tuition for Agahozo? Because maybe he was so I think he was paying for their university tuition, which is just another, just like, I don't want to use the word testament again, but I guess I have to use that word. It's just another testament to how incredible that connection that they built is. Yeah, I wanted to ask also just about its reputation throughout Rwanda, and obviously it's in a way still pretty young. It's not like a school that's been around for a while, but what's its reputation throughout, just if its general reputation in the public and potentially in the government, and what officials think of it. Either one of you can answer that.
Shiri, you can go first. Go ahead.
Okay. Thanks. So a couple of things. So we have a relationship with the government. We're not funded by the government of Rwanda. We're not, we're just a school. We're accredited by the government, but we have a recruitment relationship with the government where when we recruit our kids, the government in each district gives us a list of the most vulnerable kids in their district, because they would know, right? And we want to make sure we get kids who need this opportunity. And they send them to us, trusting that we will take care of them and do right by the kids. We also have a good relationship with the leadership, I guess I would say. Every once in a while on our graduation day, President Paul Kagame, who's the president of Rwanda, will tweet congratulations to our graduates, which is like the highlight of everybody's life, basically, when it happens. And then just sort of on the informal side, the last time I was coming into Rwanda, I was getting my passport stamped at immigration, and they're very serious at immigration, like everywhere. And she said, where are you going? What are you doing here? And I said, I'm here for graduation at Agahozo-Shalom. And she said, Agahozo. Okay, like stamp me and let me through. Everybody knows it, which is really cool. And that's partly because Rwanda is pretty small, but it has a really good reputation. And Mauri, I don't know if you know this story, that supposedly when Anne died, people came from the surrounding area to the village, even though Anne didn't die in Rwanda, and just stood outside the gates to kind of mourn her, because the village is seen as Rwandan, and they wanted to be there to support the village and to express their condolences. It was, that's a remarkable thing.
Yeah. Anything to add more?
Well, when we start our fellowship, we started with a short orientation in New York City, and then we all flew together. During orientation, we were gifted these awesome ASYV bracelets, like a Live Strong type bracelet, which I'm not wearing right now. Otherwise, I would show. I apologize. I'm so sorry. But it just took getting on one flight that one of the other fellows, he was talking to someone sitting near him, and she was like, oh, ASYV, are you going to ASYV? And he was like, yes, I am. And she's like, oh, I have so many friends who went there. She was a university student in the States who was going home to Rwanda for break. And she just listed off all these names of people she knew. And it's just, I feel like anywhere I went, then in Kigali, in the capital city, I would tell them I was a fellow at ASYV. Everyone seemed to know about it and know someone who went there, or had something really lovely to say about the village.
That's incredible. So what's the future hold? What are any next steps? Any plans in the future?
Yeah, so I mean, the first one is to open the village back up.
Okay.
So the Rwandan government reacted really quickly to COVID, and they shut down the village. They shut down all schools when there were, I think, like 11 cases in the whole country, and then they shut down the whole country 4 days later. Closed the airports, closed the borders. That's why Mauri had to come home. And so we're excited to open school in September. And until then, we're taking care of our kids. We're sending our kids money every month for food and rent and necessities, because we know that our kids are at risk of starving while they're home. We know that, our HIV positive kids need their medication. And so we're taking care of them even while they're not with us. And then we're going to open up, which is really exciting. So the government switched the school year. The Rwandan school year is usually January through October, November. And they switched it to the Western school year. So our kids they had 3 months of school and then it shut down, and they're going to go back in September and restart their school year. Which is actually a really great opportunity. Like 3 more months with our kids, we'll take it to help them. So that's kind of our big thing right now, is just getting through this moment and getting to September, and also really thinking about, well, the world just changed. What do we have to do to change with it? And what do we have to do to survive that change? And how are we going to keep our kids safe through a second wave of the virus, through whatever is coming next? Because, at the heart of it, we're responsible for them. And we need to make sure they're okay when they're within our borders, but also out in the world. We need to prepare them for whatever this shift is going to be.
So this is how I like to wrap up. I just like to ask a really, really basic question, and we'll start with you, Mauri. Just beyond the simple, obvious ways of helping out through a donation or through a care package, what are the different ways that people who are listening, or just people who might stumble upon the website, can help out and get involved, whether it's specifically with Agahozo or just in general with kids who are orphaned and struggling throughout the world?
I think first, I will offer myself as a resource to the Tufts community. Anyone who wants to learn more about ASYV, please feel free to reach out. I'm more than happy to talk about it. I love being able to talk about it, especially since I'm not there right now. And I think for people who are going to be graduating in the next couple of years and starting their careers, if anyone's interested in working at an amazing international nonprofit, this fellowship program is really wonderful, and I would highly recommend it to anyone. And if you find yourself on our website, I'd say watch as many videos as you can, read our annual reports, learn about our kids, and see some of the awesome things that we highlight. And again, I'm here to talk more about it. And if anyone finds himself in Rwanda, they should absolutely visit, because visiting and seeing it all firsthand is the best experience.
Awesome, thank you. Shiri?
I would second that last part. Definitely come visit once that kind of thing can happen again. We love visitors. And I guess I would also say, I'll do it in the words of one of the ASYV mamas. So I was sitting with a group that was visiting one day, and the mamas were talking to us about their life experience. And we asked if they had any questions for us. And one of them said, in Kinyarwanda, but it got translated, she said, "Tell me how you take care of vulnerable children in your communities." And we were all horrified, because we don't really. And so I guess that's what I would say to us is, we think the youth village model can serve anywhere that there's been societal trauma. And there's certainly societal trauma here in America. And we have a responsibility to children in our communities as well. And so I guess I would ask everyone watching, how do you take care of vulnerable children in your community? What do we do for the kids who need help, who need love, who need support, who need better educations, who need clean water? Because we have that responsibility too. And whether you're doing it for kids in Rwanda, whether you're thinking about, the kids down the street, I think that's what it means to live in a society, right? Is that we're aware of what's happening to them and we're watching out for them as best we can.
Awesome. I don't think I have anything else, and we're running out of time. You know, it's not ideal to have that 40-minute time limit on Zoom, but it's also I don't have the money right now to pay for that upgrade. But thank you guys
Makes us
so
really be thoughtful about our words, right?
Yeah, exactly. Being concise, exactly what our teachers want from us. But thank you guys again. So that was episode 5 with Shiri and Mauri from Agahozo-Shalom Youth Village. Thank you guys.
Thanks, Ro.